When we're talking about life in another country, we have to consider all of the realities, all of the possibilities, and every little instance that can potentially come up. And I think when we hear so much about, oh my gosh, these are the dark sides of XYZ country that you need to know about before moving there so you don't make this grave mistake that could cost you everything. It's important to take it with a grain of salt. There are certain things that, of course, are the realities that you have to look at and are actually genuine, legitimate downsides. But I think there are also expectations that individuals sometimes have that might be able to set them up for failure. This is something I've spoken about in so many episodes of Not Your Average Globetrotter. But in this week's episode, I wanted to go over a Reddit post that one of you had sent me via Instagram DM. I normally keep my ear to the ground when it comes to what people are talking about and what's going on, but Reddit is one of those places where I don't spend a lot of time online. Anyway, I'm Rafael Di Furia, back at it again on another Friday night for another episode of Not Your Average Globetrotter. And am I wearing your Nona's couch cushion as a jacket? Yes, maybe I am. But maybe the real question should be is, why does your Nona's couch cushion make such a great jacket, and why is it so darn comfy? Again though, this is another episode of Not Your Average Globetrotter, and roll that intro. As I'm sure some of you can guess, it is time again to bust out the glasses. In r/expats from Reddit user AHPARI, subject, I moved to Italy 9 months ago and I'm not enjoying it. I only wonder where this can go. This Redditor writes that she is a 29-year-old American woman with dual citizenship in Italy. As I'm always going to say, this is maybe one of the best ways to be able to explore the country and get a true feel for what Italy has to offer. And she says that she makes here 45,000 euros a year, which actually I would say in Italy can be fantastic and you can live really well on an income like that, but it's going to depend on the city. And it does say that she does live in Florence, so maybe in a city like Florence, 45K per year could become a little bit challenging. But she goes on to say that it was always a dream of hers to live in Italy. Her father is from Italy and has lots of family there, but they all live in rural Italy. And if you're going to live in rural Italy, say if you make that 45,000, you can live like royalty. You can live really well, potentially buy a place, get really comfortable, but if you're in your 20s, early 30s, mid 30s, socializing could become a little bit tough. And so I don't blame someone for wanting to go to one of the more major cities in the country. But then she goes on to say that at first it was pretty exciting, but now she is just bored. She found it hard to make friends and sometimes feels that Italians can be closed off to foreigners. This is one major factor that I think a lot of people don't really consider. When you go to another country, you are going to be the outsider. And maybe if you're coming from a place like the US where there's more of a melting pot and you have people coming from everywhere and it's more common to find that, or maybe it's more socially part of the fabric of the place. Not everywhere else is like that. And I think very often in Europe, not just Italy, it's very common to find people who grow up with their group of friends, and those are the people who they are really connected to for the majority of their life. But I will say in Italy, sometimes it can be a little bit more noticeable. Anyway, continuing on, she says she's a dancer, and while there are dance classes, she finds it difficult to find places to belong to or join where it's possible to work on pieces to perform. She's enrolled in a language class, and her Italian has improved enough for the ability to be able to have conversations and navigate municipal offices. And her big thing that she seems to get to in this post that she made is that she feels like she really lacks community and that there's less opportunity for her to dance, to find another job, and even during her time in a few different gyms that it's been a challenge for her to even make friends. She goes on to say that she's considered living in a different city because her job doesn't require her to be in a specific place. And this is what I always say, if you have the option to be able to move abroad with a job that gives you some sort of level of freedom and to be able to be remote, this again, top way of being able to explore the world. But even though she does have this freedom with her job, she is concerned that she might find this elsewhere in Italy. After 9 months in the country, she doesn't want to give up on making it happen because it was, according to this post, almost 10 years in the making. And here's the thing. I think it's really tough to say that in 9 months that your life is going to turn around and you're going to be totally settled in and you're going to be ready and there, that you are locked in. But I think there's another problem potentially that comes on top, and it almost seems as though that there's a quasi expectation that the move to Italy would be a factor that would make her happy, that it would be the cause of X amount of joy in her life, even if it's quantifiable or non-quantifiable, that there would be some just level based purely on the location, that there was a reliance almost on that. This is what's going to make life fun. This is going to make happiness. This is going to be an amazing new life in this new place. But as a foreigner in a new country, even if you are a dual citizen, even if one of your parents is from the country, you are going to constantly be reminded that you are the outsider. You are going to be that person who is the foreigner wherever you go. And the more time you spend abroad, the more time that you will get comfortable with that discomfort. But as again, I've repeated in so many episodes, first year abroad, you are really just like almost like the first year of life. Can't really walk on your own. You can't really do much on your own. Still barely with the goo-goos and gagas. You're still getting fed and can't really do a lot on your own. By year 2, that's when you're kind of toddling around. Maybe you can start jumping around a little bit, but you're still having that struggle to be able to properly do things all on your own. And you really want to still push. You see that there's this big world around you, but you haven't been able to learn how to explore it on your own. By the time you're 3, you can stand and walk a little bit more on your own. And maybe you can say a few things. You can string a few sentences together, but you're still having that struggle to properly make yourself understood. And maybe there will be those moments where you're laying in your bed crying in the middle of the night, trying to figure out what the heck is even going on. Then you get to year 4, you're able to get those sentences out. You're able to explain a little bit more. Yeah, maybe not perfect, but you are there. You are running around. You are out there with the rest of them. You can take a hit and get back up and still be able to go around. By year 5, you're already in the first grade. You are graduating into the first real stage of actually living in a new country. And I'm not going to say it's always going to take 5 years for that to happen, but I think it's quite fair to say, though, that there is that process that does happen, whether it takes a couple years, few years, 5 years. You will notice those stages at one point or another. And another factor that I think is important to consider here is that it almost sounds like there's an assumption that things in Italy might work the same as they might elsewhere, or that, for example, this woman mentioned that she's from the US, and it almost sounds as though there's an assumption that things work the same as they do back in the old country. And this is something that I've actually gone through personally years and years ago when I first left. We're talking about, close to 18 years, whatever it is now, that I did go through those periods. And even I had been traveling since I was very young. I knew that the world wasn't the same, but I still, even now, all these years later, catch myself thinking, whoa, okay, that's a little different. Or even sometimes I hear about things going on in the USA and I'm like, I have that same reaction. So it's not just about being in a different country, but realistically speaking, you need to be able to get outside of what is normal, unlearn what is normal and unnormal, and learn it all over again. I'm not saying that you have to go full on deep into like completely clear your mind of everything. No, I'm saying you need to relearn some of the social norms and what they are, not getting rid of who you are, your core beliefs, and what actually works and doesn't work for you, because you might find out that some of the social norms in whatever country that it is that you're going to really might not work for you. And there are plenty of people that are out there that just end up finding out that once they've spent a year or two in a country, that things just really aren't a good fit for them, who they are and what they're needing out of life. But here's another thing. I think many Italian Americans often have the assumption that because of their identity back in the US, that they're Italian. People will tell them they're Italian. They might have certain stories about their family, or they might have this cultural kind of connection. They might have certain feelings and certain experiences that all point to them feeling Italian. But what will happen is that when they come to Italy, they'll come and have this realization that they are Italian American, that they are from this Italian root, but they also are this other thing, that this new thing. And being Italian American may come from a root of being Italian, but it's not exactly the same, that you don't have some of the same cultural reference points. Maybe you didn't grow up within the school system. Growing up within a school system just alone, I think, makes a huge difference in your experience. You'll be able to joke and talk about things, or maybe you have cultural references to certain movies, or I don't know. Recently, I even saw a video that came up on, I don't know, Instagram or Facebook, some reel that was just coming through as I was scrolling. There's a group of millennials sitting in a restaurant, and they're all quoting the "Do you know the Muffin Man" line from well, not just the line, but the whole scene from Shrek, from the original Shrek, you're not going to maybe have some of those little reference points for those things that happen in your country. Okay, maybe fine. A movie like that might be translated into a million languages, but you're not going to sit in the same room with, I don't know, 100 other people quoting this scene verbatim. And even if that's not the best example, it's still a little insight into what you might be able to find and what might come up as life goes on. There are going to be things that people talk about, like certain cartoons or certain little things from their childhood that you're not going to have a frame of reference for. You might not know what it is. And even if they explain it to you, you're going to maybe sit there, scratch like, okay, whatever, big deal. But being the outsider also can give you an advantage in some ways, that you can have that ability to be the one who is fumbling and making mistakes from time to time, saying things that sound a little bit off. But I think, though, there are so many people who dream of what their life is going to be like in Italy, how amazing it's going to be when they are finally just able to go and be in the country that they were meant to be in. And it's not just Italy. It's so many different countries. Oh, the culture is going to be like this, or the people, the women, the men, the politics, the financial system, the banks, the whatever it might be. There's going to be that thing that, oh my gosh, those people, they know what they're doing. They know how to live. They know how to do that thing. But then when you see all of the other things that come in around that, and sometimes very complicated things. And when we were talking about Italy, we were talking about very complicated things, especially if we're talking about bureaucracy, Italy's second national pastime after calcio, soccer, European football. Because of course, there's no perfect country. There's not going to be a country that is going to answer your problems because you've moved there. Oh my gosh, things in my country have changed and they're going down this path and people are so this or they're so that. They're so fascist, they're so communist, they're so whatever it might be, that going to another country is not going to change how you perceive things. They're not going to change what you experience. You're going to find people who you like and dislike, people who like and dislike you everywhere you go. It's just your ability to connect. And there are certain nationalities that, even though I don't like to generalize that, I know for me, I sometimes find more of a barrier with when it comes to socialization. But then you also can notice that it's not just about nationality. It could be a certain type of person. You start to see patterns as life goes on over the years, that people are just people no matter where you are on earth. You're not going to connect with everybody, and not everybody will want to be your friend, but you might not want to be everybody's friend as well. But she did actually have a really good idea about trying to maybe join a gym and to do classes and to try to meet people that way. But I think one factor that I've mentioned many times also that I avoided for many years was getting stuck in the expat bubble. I had my times when I was in the expat bubble, outside of the expat bubble, and times where I've kind of had one foot in, one foot out. And I really do think that in the initial stages, when you move to a new country, exploring expat events for English speakers, whatever it might be, could really be helpful. I will say, though, that in Italy, that can sometimes come with a little bit of a challenge depending on where you are. I mean, for example, I've even been to international English speaking events where the point of the event was that it was for people to speak in English, but then people were there and they said, no, siamo in Italia, parliamo italiano. And kind of even some of the event organizers weren't so happy about that as well, but they were in their country, so they of course feel the right to be able to speak their own language. And that makes perfect sense. To me, I found it a little bit strange maybe to go to an event that was kind of particularly for speaking English, but people wanted to speak in Italian. But hey, I'm not here to judge. But I might still just a little bit anyway. I'm human at the end of the day. These things happen. But this is something that I think there is a strong sentiment in Italy in general, that there is maybe not such an openness, but it's changing in a way, I could say, from the times that I've more recently been to Italy and spent time there. In general, if you want to go to a country like Italy, and especially Italy, learning the language is imperative. But even if you learn the language perfectly, you are still always going to be the outsider, the American, the foreigner, the person. Even if you have an accent or you don't have an accent. Actually, my particular situation is people can't usually tell what my accent is specifically. They can guess. Maybe sometimes I sound a little American. Sometimes I sound like a little bit of this, or sometimes I sound a little bit of that. Or they can't tell exactly where I'm from. They know that the way that I speak, even if I can get some sentences out and sound really great, that there's a little something in there like, where are you from? Who are you? Because in Italy in general, doesn't matter if you're from the country or outside, if you're not from that place where you are, I'll say maybe there could be an exception of being from a place like Milan, where just so many people are not from Milan to begin with, but in many places, that if you are not part of that local group, that local population, that you are the outsider. So for example, someone coming from the south to the north, north to the south, or even from one town to another, even within the same region. Oh, you're from that town? Oh, well, we feel a certain way about people from that town. And this is not to say that this is a negative thing or a positive thing. This is just something that I have noticed time and time again in Italy. Even if you adapt to the culture and adopt many things, there are still going to be those details which set you apart. It all just really comes to what degree. How far is that going to really separate you? Even in many countries, I will say that just not being from there to begin with can set you apart. And even if you go to many parts of the US, by being from another country, there are going to be many people who see that their social lives aren't what they would hope for elsewhere. And again, maybe in the US, yes, it would be normal to go to a gym and be able to join and do classes or dance and be able to find your crew. But if you are coming from the outside, then maybe there will be those instances where that could be a little bit more tough depending on where you are. But I think another added challenge here is that in Florence, it's a very touristy city. And so if you are not from there, there are going to be probably a lot of people who assume that you're only there temporarily anyway. And if someone has that assumption that you're not going to be permanently there, it's very common for that person to not want to attach. And in Italy, people do have those longer term friendships, those longer term relationships, those longer term work relationships, like that they keep a job for a very long time, for their whole life. And they are very happy to just stay in that one job and not go job hunting and job hopping. So could it be that moving to another city could help? I don't know. Actually, I think Italy is maybe a tough place to really think about, is one city better for living than another, other than maybe a place potentially like Rome or Milan, just because they are so big and they have so many different people from so many places. But at the same time, so many Italian cities in general are so very touristy that I think it's very common that people are going to assume that if someone's not from there, that they could be an outsider until you go to the same store 50, 100, 200 times, until like they see you on a regular basis and get to know your face. You start striking up those conversations with them until you really get integrated. It's going to take a long time. And 9 months is really not long enough to give it a fair shot in Italy, in my opinion. Are there maybe places, cities, and countries where it could be easier to have that integration and things might be a little bit more international and people might be more accustomed to someone who's not from there? Yes, I think there are other options that for someone looking for a little bit more of an international feel, and even if they're not looking for the international feel, but to be welcomed in an international community, and they might have an even easier time to be able to settle into something. And I don't know if any of those places that would straight off the top of my head come to mind, if any of those would be in Italy. I'm not saying that it can't be done in Italy and that you can't make friends, but it takes a lot of time and effort. And like I was kind of getting to before, is first get into that expat community. From there, just give yourself a moment to be able to integrate little by little. Eventually, you'll start making more local connections. Maybe one person will have one friend. Go to events, go to have an aperitivo, or even look for Facebook groups for people who are looking for a language exchange. Or if you're a university student, see if someone's willing to exchange their native language for your native language, and that you do half the time in your language, half the time in their language. You get together for like an hour block or something like that. Go grab a coffee, a drink, whatever is of interest to the both of you. I think doing it over a coffee is maybe a little bit easier until you maybe get to know the other person a little bit better. But even doing a language exchange isn't the best for everybody. Personally, for me, I don't find it to be the optimal way to practice a language, but just forcing yourself to use a language is the best. This is one thing that in Italy, I really do wish sometimes that they had Uber more usable there, or other ride-sharing apps, because in Italy also, I'm less likely to take a taxi because they end up costing quite a bit in comparison to other places, especially Ubers and Bolts or whatever they might be in other countries. But in the countries where they do have those, I end up using those as kind of like a throw yourself in the deep end, try to force yourself to try to have a conversation, because there are a lot of these guys that are driving around. They have no one that's talking to them the whole day and they get lonely and they're happy to have a conversation. Not that a taxi driver won't, but it's just something that in certain countries I've noticed, not every country, of course, but there are certain places where they're happy to talk to you. They're happy to tell you about where they're from, especially if you can tell maybe they're not from that place. Like, oh, where are you from? What do you do here? How do you like living here? How do people feel about, what's your experience been? People I find often are happy to share those experiences when they are given the opportunity, especially in those types of situations where you're getting a ride and maybe you have 5 minutes, 10 minutes. You've got a limited amount of time, so you're not going to be stuck in a 3-hour conversation, at least you hope not. But allowing yourself to have that time to be able to try and jump in that deep end, that's when you're going to start to notice that you might be able to enjoy things that little bit more. Allowing yourself to have that flexibility and that grace to have the time, not to be rushed through it, really helps a lot. If you're looking to do a relocation speed run and just get straight into it, see how fast you can set up your life, you're going to get really disappointed really quickly. But even though earlier in the episode I did say I don't think 9 months is enough time, you still have to know when enough is enough and when you've put in enough time that you don't see yourself investing more to get any more return out of. That's what life is. Time, of course, is the most valuable resource we have that you'll never get back, but wherever you're going to be spending it, you need to think about how you're investing it. Not every interaction is going to have to come back with this return that's going to be amazing. And I kind of hate to put it into these terms of investing, return, and but in a sense, it's kind of like that in life. What are you putting your time into? Where are you putting your time into? And who are you putting your time into? And who, what, and where is putting that time back into you. Anyway, of course, as always, if you have any thoughts on this topic, anything to add, or anything that you agree with or disagree with, feel free to let me know down in the comment section below. Thank you to those of you who helped to make these episodes possible through rafaeldifuria.com/Patreon, patreon.com/RafaelDiFuria, the one-time support through the YouTube thanks button, as well as rafaeldifuria.com/support. But anyway, I'm Rafael Di Furia. We've been here again for another Friday night episode of Not Your Average Globetrotter. I've been here in your grandmother's, your Nona's favorite couch cushion. Stay safe and healthy out there, and I will see you all next time. Later.